Thank you. At the Ordinary Council meeting on the 19th of February this year, Council resolved to receive a report detailing options, including associated benefits, risks and costs, to Council to respond to the challenge of alleged illegal brothels in Brimbank. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider these options.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors, on this issue? No? The Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor David. I would like to move an amended motion, please, or it's an alternate motion to the officer's recommendation, and that is that Council notes the option available to Council to investigate illegal brothels in Brimbank as outlined in Attachment 1. But the alternate is that we endorse option 2 contained in options paper at attachment 1 to engage independent investigators to investigate alleged illegal brothels in Brimbank with the intent to close down illegal operations in conjunction with Victoria Police. And C refers an initial cost of $36,000 to this 2019-20 budget process for consideration, and the remainder of the motion is as per the officer's recommendation.
Can I have a second, please, for this? Councillor Heritage. Would you like to speak, Madam Mayor?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, councillors, you'll recall that back on the 19th of February, I raised a notice of motion requesting that Council receive a report detailing options, including associated benefits, risks and costs for Council to respond to the challenge of alleged illegal brothels operating in this municipality. And if I can, I just wanted to take a moment to take a step back and to understand why I raised that notice of motion and why it was brought to Council in the first place. So the reason I raised that notice of motion was a response from many community members regarding their concern for the amount of alleged illegal brothels that are operating within this municipality. It has been an ongoing conversation with us since we were elected and concern from members of the public. Some of the primary concerns were the number, so over 14 that I know of allegedly are operating. The location, many of them are across the road from schools, they're in main streets, they're in local across the road from local parks. Some of them are in residential homes, so people are living next door to them. And there are some operating next door to businesses, and I have one in particular that I think I mentioned last time when I raised this, is operating next door to a professional business with a plaster wall in between, and the noise disturbance to that business and the health and safety of the workers within that business is being impacted. We were also concerned about the number of other things that might be happening within these massage parlours, as many of them are fronts, including people being asked to do sex acts that they're not comfortable with, trafficking of sex workers, drugs, other illegal activities, money laundering, etc. The other reason that I raised this was that we had evidence from other councils, including Kingston Council, that they had managed, by employing independent investigators, they'd managed to close down 14 illegal brothels. Now, my understanding is that since my time in council, we've closed one. There's been many, many complaints, but we've managed to close one, which was where Sadie Black is now, in Albion. So I want to thank all of the officers for all the work that they've put into this report and for their original recommendation. And I understand why the recommendation was that we maintain the status quo, but I don't agree with it. And the reason I don't agree with it is if we maintain the status quo, we maintain the results that we're getting now. And in my book and the book of many of the residents that I talk to, we're just not getting the cut through that we need to tackle this issue. Our police, although they want to investigate and they want to close these places down, they have to jump through a number of hoops. They have They have different laws. We can close that. We can close premises down under the planning reform. They have to criminally prosecute. So it's a different kettle of fish. So they're not getting the results. The community have nowhere to turn. They look to us to help them. There's a cost here that's been proposed of $36,000. That's an estimated annual cost of addressing many illegal brothels. We're talking about $4,000 a pop to hire an investigator plus the administrative work around that. In my view, if we manage to close down or investigate several brothels and close them down or move them on and it costs us $36,000, it would be money well spent. And I think that I echo the voice of many community members when I say that. So that is my humble opinion, and that's my view as a council. And I ask my fellow councillors to support this motion and to support the wider community in addressing this very, very serious concern for them. And I commend this report to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Haddish, would you like to speak?
Briefly, I support all the Mayor said. I think there's a need to take an alternative tack with this, and that the amended motion does that, and I do commend the officers for their work. We've got the options, we've got the costs, we've got to make the decision now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haddish. Any other comments, councillors?
Questions?
Questions, if you like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I support everything that you said. My only question is, in terms of the disadvantages that was mentioned about how the, what was it? I lost it. The SCIC was referring more people to council, which placed a greater burden on council, which then raised costs. What will be done in that space to make sure that we're not just taking it all on ourselves and that we're working with the Victorian Police? Because although I see that, you know, option, I think D mentions that we write to them, but I'm just wondering what we would do in that scenario where we get a greater burden.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Christine. Thank you.
It would be our intention to work closely with the police so that we would not like to see a large number of referrals back from the police and then basically washing their hands of it, which I don't imagine would happen. They are very cooperative in our discussions with them. So I think it would be a matter of working with the police and working through the issues involved in each one and trying to work together so that we're not basically pushing back and forward between each other.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Judy Chen, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Whilst I'll agree with all the comments around the room, I do have an issue with this. We are not law and order. This issue is supposed to be law and order. And whilst we would be hiring private investigators, the money that we would be spending on the private investigators, that evidence still has to be handed over to the police anyway. So I'm not quite sure how hiring private investigators would actually help this cause, because the police still, at the end of the day, have to do what they have to do. And whilst we have powers under the Planning and Environment Act, I'm not quite sure, do the police have evidence over these things? Why aren't they closing them down if they're illegal? There's a lot of questions there in my mind. The other question that I also have is referring it to the budget. Now, our draft budget is actually out for consultation. I'm not quite sure how the public would actually be looking at this thinking, well, if they can refer $36,000 to the budget for this, then we can refer $36,000 to the budget for something else, or $100,000 for something else. And I'm sure that there would be some questions around it. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but I cannot support this as it is. I would revert back to the original recommendation if this does not go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Judy Chen.
Deputy Mayor, question for the officers, please. Ms Gilbert, under the work of Kingston City Council, I understand that under their planning scheme, the police are not required to be involved to close down a venue. Is that correct?
My understanding is Kingston aren't necessarily using the planning scheme, but they're using the Sex Work Act and prescribing premises, which means that the premises can then not be used for a period of time, sometimes 3 months, sometimes up to 12 months. So nobody can enter or leave that premises at all during that time, or it's an offence.
Yes.
So they're prosecuting it under the Sex Work Act as opposed to the Planning and Environment Act.
Correct. So the police do not need to be involved in the investigation in the event a private investigator finds illegal activity happening on that site. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor, it's an issue that's been before us for quite a while. It's very important to all of us. Any comments on that? Any other questions, perhaps, before I put it to the vote? Councillor Papafotis, yeah.
I'm going to be brief. I concur with the Mayor. As councillors, we're representing the community and we must do something. We've got residents that come to us and have complained about these brothels again and again over the last 2.5 years. The police are well aware of it. We need to work with the police, but we need to do a bit more as well as a council. So I will support the amendment that the Mayor's made. Thank you.
Comments, Councillor Lancashire, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
This is Mr. here.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you,
Some time ago, as a Director of Planning and Development at a council, I won't name the council, we had a brothel diagonally opposite the Member of Parliament's office, and it was operating for some time by the time we found out about it, and we found out about it because a lady had overdosed and died in the facility, because obviously there was not just prostitution occurring, but very much drug dealing occurring, and it was quite disturbing when we found out. The fact back then, as seems to be now, the police have real difficulties in dealing with these issues is disappointing. We took the matter on, but we were also mindful back then that some other councils had tried to do the same and had ended up in the courts, to which their costs were spiralling upwards of $500,000 in those sort of things, because some of these businesses are very much profitable and are able to just fight you endlessly in the courts. So not to be taken on lightly. We did use a private investigator as part of our process, and there's clearly a cost involved with that. The planning process or other acts that might be available to us are quite good. But again, I just issue some caution that as a public authority, using private investigators in this area was not taken lightly by us, to say, in the council I worked in at the time, because of what was actually collecting evidence was awkward. The risk of running over in costs as we go through processes and get entangled into court processes is an issue. What ultimately closed that particular place down was quite a simple technique, actually. We found out the owners of the premises and told them quite clearly that if they didn't close it down, we were going to expose them, and it closed down. So we need to make sure we explore all options on how to deal with these premises and be quite forthright in how we go about these things before we bog ourselves down into a process that could be more difficult.
It's okay.
Thank you.
It's all safe. No. Thank you, Councillor Lancashire. Any other comments, councillors? No? Madam, to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just to sum up, I was just having a look through the advantages and disadvantages of the proposed recommendation, and I just wanted to highlight again that the cost of using investigators, which is between $3,000 and $4,000 per investigation, generally provides enough evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that there is something going on in the facility. And in most instances, on the experiences of the other councils that have done it, the costs of the investigator and legal representation are awarded to council when it is successfully prosecuted. So there is a chance that the money we are outlaying comes back. We do not need the police to be involved. As Councillor Giudice suggested before, that is not correct. We do not need the police to be involved to execute the matter under our own powers, under the planning scheme. it does not preclude police being involved. So as Ms Gilbert suggested, if we find something and we prosecute or we find that there's something going on there, we close the premises down for 3 months, the police can then become involved so that if they choose to open again, the police can intervene at that stage. I think the other point to highlight is that I would suggest that most of the people that are operating these venues don't own the premises but are in fact renting them out, and that once the owner finds out that what's going on in that business, I doubt very much that the owners would allow that business to reoperate under their premises. I certainly wouldn't if I owned that particular building. In summing up again, I ask the council to consider this. I know that we are in draft budget stage, but that is exactly that. It is draft budget for us to be able to make changes before it is finalised and adopted by council. There is still time. We are talking about a very small amount of money in the grand scheme of things, a $280 million budget, $36,000 to deal with this issue, which is a bugbear for many, many people in our community. We have a responsibility
Time,
to our
Madam Mayor.
residents.
Is there a possibility of extension?
No extension.
Okay.
Thank you. Commend the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, put the report to the vote, please. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Division? Thank you. Division?
Division?
Division.
The Mayor asks for a division. Councillors, all those in favour? Please, stand up.
Just say each name in. Just say each name.
And myself? All those against, please?
Sorry.
I've got to name you, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I can name me. All those in favour again? Councillor Palm, Councillor Lancashire, the Mayor, Councillor John, Councillor Heritage, Councillor Allen, Councillor Tagus, Councillor Borg, and Councillor Papafotiu. All those against? Councillor Judicated. Thank you.